Hey everyone, what's going on? This is US Armed Updates, and I hope you're all doing well today. So, I've got some absolutely critical news to share with you, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this. What just happened is going to impact every single gun owner in this country. This isn't hyperbole, this isn't clickbait, this is real, and it's happening right now as we speak. Do you remember back at the beginning of this year when we were promised the world? National reciprocity, constitutional carry, repeal of the NFA, defunding the ATF, rolling back all those unconstitutional gun control measures from the previous administration. I mean, the promises were endless. We were told that this was going to be the most pro-Second Amendment administration in history. The future looked bright, right? We actually had hope for once. Well, if you've been paying attention, you already know how this story goes. Congress threw us scraps, breadcrumbs, and we were supposed to be grateful for it. Then came the Bondi nomination to head the DOJ, and they had the audacity to claim this would be the most pro-Second Amendment Department of Justice ever assembled. Now, let me tell you something. That's a pretty low bar to clear in the first place. But more importantly, it was a complete and total lie. And folks, it's only gotten worse since then. Way worse. Instead of rolling back existing regulations like they promised, this DOJ has been fighting tooth and nail to uphold every single one of them. And while that's exactly what we've come to expect from government bureaucrats, it doesn't make it any less infuriating when they betray us the way they did yesterday. Yesterday might have been the most disgusting, the most insulting betrayal yet. People are absolutely furious right now, and they have every right to be. So let's dive into what just happened, because this affects every single one of us. Make sure you stick around for this entire video, because what I'm about to tell you is something every gun owner needs to understand. But before we get into the details, I want to remind you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any critical updates. We're one of the only channels giving you the real, unfiltered truth about what's happening to our Second Amendment rights. And if you appreciate this content, hit that thumbs up button. It really helps us reach more people who need to hear this information. Alright, so let's talk about what's going on here. As I'm sure most of you know by now, when Congress passed what they called the One Big Beautiful Bill, they zeroed out the tax on certain NFA items. Now, this wasn't exactly what we were hoping for, not even close, but by zeroing out that NFA tax, they effectively eliminated the legal justification for the registry. Let me explain why this is so important. The registration system couldn't continue to exist because it was directly tied to that tax. The entire reason the registry existed in the first place was to provide proof that the tax had been collected and the stamp had been issued. That was the only constitutional justification they ever had for keeping a registry of these items. Even the Supreme Court, all the way back in 1937, said that these two things were linked together and that one could not survive constitutional scrutiny without the other. So after this bill passed, we saw major federal lawsuits get filed specifically to remove the NFA's registration requirement and subsequently remove these items from its regulations entirely. This was it. This was the moment we'd been waiting for. Even Congress wrote a letter, and I actually have a copy of that letter right here, directly to the DOJ and to Bondi herself, notifying them in no uncertain terms that when Congress passed this bill, their intent was to deregulate these items. Period. End of story. And you know what response we got from the DOJ about that letter from Congress? Crickets. Absolute silence. Radio silence. They completely ignored it. Well, yesterday, the federal government's response was due in a case called Silencer Shop Foundation versus ATF, and we were all waiting with bated breath to see what position the DOJ would take. Given that the registry is clearly unconstitutional and represents a massive burden on our freedom, this was the DOJ's chance to prove they were who they claimed to be. This was their opportunity to show that they were actually pro-Second Amendment like they promised. After reading through their 48-page memorandum, I can tell you with absolute certainty, the Department of Justice does not believe in the Constitution, and they absolutely do not believe in the Second Amendment. Not even a little bit. In this memorandum, they fought tooth and nail to uphold the NFA and its entire registration scheme using arguments that sound like they were copied and pasted directly from the Biden administration. I'm not exaggerating here. The language they used, the arguments they made, this could have been written by gun control advocates. For example, they repeatedly used the phrase weapons of war. Let me read you exactly what they said. The NFA's regulation of short-barreled rifles targets a concealable weapon likely to be used for criminal purposes. The NFA's regulation of short-barreled shotguns targets weapons valued for their ability to be easily concealed and unleash devastating damage at short range. And the NFA regulates weapons that are primarily weapons of war. Weapons of war. Does that sound familiar? That's the exact same anti-gun rhetoric we've been hearing from the gun control lobby for decades, and now it's coming from the DOJ that's supposed to be defending our rights. But wait, it gets even worse. They actually made an argument, and I'm not joking about this, that using their own logic, you could ban virtually every firearm in the country. They opened the door wide open for banning nearly everything we own. Let me read this to you directly from their filing. Seeking to curtail armed crime, the NFA targeted particularly dangerous and easily concealable weapons that could be used readily and effectively by criminals. Think about that for a second. Particularly dangerous weapons that could be easily concealed and used by criminals? That's literally every firearm in existence. You can hide a handgun, you can hide a rifle under a coat. Criminals use whatever weapons they want. By this logic, they could ban everything. And they just put that argument in writing in a federal court filing. The most pro-Second Amendment DOJ ever even went so far as to quote Ninth Circuit precedent to support their anti-gun position. Let me tell you something about the Ninth Circuit. They've overturned exactly one law that infringed on Second Amendment rights in their entire 130-year existence. One time. They are the most anti-gun circuit court in the entire country, and this DOJ is citing them as authority. That should tell you everything you need to know. Asking the Ninth Circuit to overturn a Second Amendment infringement is like asking a candy company to ban sugar. It's never going to happen, and everyone knows it. But that's who this supposedly pro-gun DOJ is relying on for their legal arguments. Now, the main takeaway from all of this is crystal clear. They have decided to vigorously defend the NFA and all of its unconstitutional regulations. They're arguing that Congress's taxing power still exists in some form through the NFA, and they have absolutely no plans to change their stance whatsoever. None. Zero. Let me be clear about something. Just because they're making these arguments doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win. Silencer Shop Foundation still has an extremely strong case here, and there's a very real possibility that in the end, the DOJ is going to have to eat every single one of these words. But what an absolutely disgusting, shameful betrayal of the American people and gun owners specifically. This is exactly why people cannot stand bureaucrats. This is why trust in government is at an all-time low. You talk a good game until you get into office, and then you turn your back on the very people who put you there. The same people who voted for this administration, who believed the promises, who had hope that things would actually be different this time, they've all been betrayed. I am so fed up with this at this point, and I know you are too. We were promised change. We were promised a DOJ that would defend our constitutional rights. Instead, we got more of the same, more betrayal, more lies, more attacks on our Second Amendment freedoms. Now the case is going to move forward. Both parties are seeking summary judgment, and we can only hope that freedom and liberty will win out in the end. But we can't just sit back and wait for the courts to save us. We need to make our voices heard. We need to hold these people accountable for their broken promises. This administration promised us they would be different. They promised us they would defend the Second Amendment. They promised us they would roll back unconstitutional gun control measures. Instead, they're fighting to uphold them using the same exact arguments that anti-gun activists have been using for years. Contact your representatives. Let them know you're watching. Let them know you remember what was promised and you're not going to forget this betrayal. Share this information with everyone you know. Every gun owner in this country needs to understand what's happening right now. The fight for our Second Amendment rights never ends. Every single day, there are people working to chip away at our freedoms, and unfortunately, some of those people are sitting in positions where they promise to defend those very freedoms. It's disgusting, it's unacceptable, and we cannot let them get away with it. I wanted to make sure you all knew about this absolute betrayal. Even though I know nobody's really all that surprised anymore, because this is what government does, it's still something every single person needs to be aware of. This isn't just about NFA items. This is about the precedent being set. This is about a DOJ that claims to support the Second Amendment while simultaneously arguing in federal court that they should be able to regulate weapons that are easily concealable and used by criminals. which again is everything. Make sure you share this video with as many people as possible. Get this information out there. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, turn on notifications, and give this video a thumbs up. We need to reach as many gun owners as possible with this critical information. I want to thank all of you so much for watching. I really do appreciate each and every one of you for being here and staying informed. Knowledge is power, and the more we know about what's happening, the better equipped we are to fight back and defend our rights. You all stay safe out there, stay vigilant, and I'll see you in the next video.